Radiant magic in combination with a focus on dealing as much additional posture damage to your enemies as possible is one of the most rewarding and devastating setups in Lords of the Fallen. Spells offer solid damage, insane survivability, and a disgustingly high posture breaking potential. If you're seeking an unkillable, Grim Reaper-esque caster melee hybrid knockout machine with an infinite mana pool that is based around combining fortifying sacred imbuements whilst quite literally raining down righteous holy fury that obliterates enemies with one of the most devastating grand swords in the game, all whilst fulfilling the holy paladin aesthetic with a sinister twist, then this, my friends, is the build for you. Phase Shifter here, and thank you for checking out my Radiant Reaper build. In today's video, we're breaking down what is, in my opinion, the best melee caster hybrid build that has a specialism in ripping through stagger bars and delivering those oh so satisfying grievous strikes. We'll be going over the stats, weapons, armor, rings, pendants, and rune choices that make this build an unkillable knockout machine with an infinite mana pool. We cover all things ARPG and FPS on this channel, so if you enjoy games like Lords of the Fallen, consider subscribing to the channel. The community would absolutely love to have you. Drop a like if you enjoy the video and sound off in the comments below with any thoughts and questions. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. The best starting class is without a shadow of a doubt the Orient Preacher. This will come as no surprise. The Orient Preacher is best equipped to build characters into a Radiant setup. It starts with 18 points, it begins with the Orient Preacher hammer. What's not to like, folks? The best starting weapon with this build is definitely the Orient Preacher hammer, which is an absolute beast in the early to mid game. You can also use Radiant Catalysts to gain access to strong skills such as Radiant Weapon and Radiant Flare. These will act as an excellent carry through your playthrough. In the early game, the main stats to focus on in this build are Radiance for damage scaling and Vitality for survivability. As you transition through the mid to late game, you will require 20 points in Strength to ensure that you can wield our main weapon of choice, and around 20 points in Endurance to have ample stamina to utilize it. My advice here would be to get Radiance to around 50 and then fill in the rest in any order of your choosing, depending on when you choose to switch from the hammer to our main weapon. If you choose to go with the more aesthetically pleasing looking shield for this build, then 15 agility points will also be required to use it. Probably not favorable for a min-maxer, but if you like the way things look in this game, then this is surely the way to go. For the primary weapon, I am using the Bloody Glory Grand Sword. In my opinion, this is one of the most badass looking weapons in the game, especially when it's imbued with Radiant Weapon. Fully upgraded, this sword comes with a high A+ Radiant scaling, absolutely ridiculous attack power, combined with decent physical damage and absolutely cranked holy damage. However, one of the most appealing characteristics on top of all this is that it has 300 bleed damage. Combining this with Radiant Weapon gives this sword a monstrous knockout potential and presents us with a number of choices when setting up our posture breaking abilities. This sword lends itself perfectly to posture breaking enemies, and depending on how you build your character, you can explore different avenues and ways to manipulate this mechanic efficiently. Whichever approach you take, this weapon is a mainstay in a build that takes the posture breaker approach. It also goes without saying that this sword looks superb when imbued with Radiant Weapon and really completes the Radiant Reaper kind of look. This sword can be acquired as early in the game as you like. All you need is 18,000 Vigor to purchase the Pilgrim's Perch Key from Stonemand in Skyrest Bridge. This then allows you to open the door by the Bell Room waypoint, which leads into a difficult area. Note that if you choose to do this, be careful. The mobs absolutely slap, and I would advise bringing Vestige Seeds so you can set up waypoints as you progress. Navigate through this area to find the sword. You can also grab the nearby vestige and get the hell out of there. The 3 rune slots in this weapon make a huge difference to the build. 2 Oromon runes are in there to further improve your radiance scaling, resulting in an overall net damage increase. And then the 3rd slot is up to you. I personally have a Sartis rune socketed, as it further increases the holy damage and the posture breaking ability of this build, as it synergizes well with items that complement this setup. More on that later. Other options include a Rook rune for further posture damage, Tummel for a HP gain on kill setup, Sabino for life on hit, and Nartan for mana on kill, or another Oromon rune for more damage scaling. It's entirely your own choice, but I focus on getting those grievous strikes pulled off as quickly as possible. A heavy shield serves multiple purposes. It gives excellent protection, adding to our already awesome survivability, which I'll be outlining later in the gear choices, and it also affords us the opportunity to have an infinite mana pool, which enables us to heal continuously. We have a choice of 1 light shield and 5 heavy shields in this build. The Light Reaper shield is our light slot option and alleviates alleviates any weight issues a heavy shield may present. Unfortunately, I really dislike how this shield looks, and given that style equals more damage, I can't quite bring myself to use it. In our heavy shield slots, we have Angel's Aegis, Shield of Whispers, Ravager's Great Shield, Heavy Memento, and Shield of Piercing Light. Heavy Memento is the best in slot, but again, this makes my eyes bleed and I can't stand the way it looks. My personal choice is the Shield of Piercing Light, and I've made this decision purely from an aesthetic point of view. These 5 shields all have one thing in common. When fully upgraded, they have 3 rune slots that allow for the use of 3 Radiant runes socketed into them, therefore giving us complete freedom here if we're going for a full mana regen setup. With that in mind, I have socketed my shield with 3 Nartan runes, and this is mandatory for this setup if you want to alleviate the requirement to use Mana Stone Ring to keep your choice of aura up permanently to keep our health topped off. This also means the ring slot is free to increase our damage and knockout potential. I believe you can only get 1 Nartan rune per playthrough, and they are located in an umbral belly in the mines by the hoist waypoint. You can access this after you've drained the water in this area. If you've not got more than one of these at your disposal, I would recommend pushing to get a Mana Stone Ring and then seeing if you can rush a quick playthrough of another NG to ensure that you have at least 2 of them. Mana Stone consumables can also offset mana loss, but this can prove expensive in the early to mid game when you're trying to spend points on leveling up. You could also opt to use the Crafter's Essence to take away the weight requirement and then have a larger pool of armors to wear to improve your defenses. The best in slot choice for Radiance catalysts is the Exacta Scripture, which you can acquire from completing Exacta Dunmire's questline. At plus 10, this provides us with exceptional spell power, sitting at almost 700, and S-tier Radiant scaling, and if that wasn't already enough, 5 spell slots. A simply sublime choice here. Other options until this point are Abyss Chalice, Radiant Purifier, Wilmark's Catalyst, and Agony's Light. Agony's Light is really easy to acquire at the start of the game and can be utilised all the way through the game effectively. This is dropped by the spiky-headed mobs that we come across in Pilgrim's Perch, and my advice would be to farm one of these, particularly the one that spawns outside the Bell Room waypoint, and this will also net you some excellent vigor gains along with your catalyst. In terms of rings and pendants, the only mandatory choice here is the Hallowed Triptych pendant. The Hallowed Triptych is a superb choice as it means holy damage deals additional posture damage. We have huge amounts of holy damage, so this is a match made in heaven, no pun intended, and when combined with the upcoming ring options, completely decimates posture bars. If you want to obliterate your enemy's posture bars with ease, then the Ring of Sanguine Might is a firm favourite choice here. Wearing this ring means we add additional posture damage to our attacks when striking a bleeding target. This synergizes perfectly with our Bloody Glory's 300 bleed damage, which is further compounded by the fact the sword also does holy damage via its innate stats and the Radiant Weapon imbuement. Our second ring slot is flexible, and this is where your own decision will come into play and perhaps how much exploration and grinding of items you are prepared to do. Option 1, and my own personal choice, is the Orient Sorcerer's Ring. This provides us with a flat holy damage increase, which creates further synergy between our holy damage output and the Hallowed Triptych, thus doing even more damage to our enemy stagger bars. This ring can be acquired from Stonemund when you happen across him in the Abbey of the Hallowed Sisters. Our second choice here is the Envenomed Ring, which increases the posture damage of our charged attacks. This can be devastating, but I find it forces us into a slower play style, and this approach really relies on us landing charge attacks that, whilst they're very hard hitting and satisfying to land, really ruin the flow of the combat for me personally. If you're interested, this can be acquired by completing Kukajin's lengthy quest line. Finally, you could choose the Mana Stone Ring if you're willing to forgo damage output and posture breakability for an even more sustainable mana pool. I personally just use Mana Stones when I need to, which isn't too often, and you already have superb spell sustain from the 3 Nartan runes in the shield if you are completing this build in its entirety. Our casting is what really ties this build together. The first choice of spell is Aureus' Judgment and can be acquired from Stonemund when you encounter him in the Abbey of the Hallowed Sisters along with the Orient Sorcerer's Ring. This spell summons a thundercloud above its target and tracks it as it moves, striking it intermittently with bolts of holy devastation. If you may recall, we are geared towards causing extra posture damage to enemies with holy damage via the interaction this spell has with the Hallowed Triptych pendant. This means, along with a respectable damage, it also decimates stagger bars of enemies before we can even reach them. I like to cast this on tougher enemies from a distance, so by the time I approach them or they approach me, they simply need a kick before the grievous Grievous Strike is administered. This is also highly effective at clearing out rooms and trash mobs, an absolute mainstay in this build. The second spell is Piercing Light. This is our standard ranged attack that is exceptional at dealing with other ranged mobs. However, much like Aureus' Judgment, this interacts with hallowed triptych and causes even larger amounts of damage to enemy stagger bars. This again makes it incredibly easy for us to break stagger bars and finish off enemies with Grievous Strikes. I think you're probably seeing a pattern emerge here, folks. It's almost laughable how easy it is for us to consistently break enemy posture bars whenever we wish. Our third spell choice is Radiant Weapon. This imbues our weapon with even more radiant damage and synergizes really well with the previously mentioned aspects of the build. It also completes the build's aesthetic, ensuring that the Radiant Reaper truly lives up to its name. I've run some brief tests, and using Lacerate to increase bleed damage is also a viable choice here when enemies are resistant to holy damage, but I think the difference isn't too staggering. Either choice here further emphasizes the posture breaking specialism this build can offer. Our fourth spell is Invigorating Aura. This provides us and our allies with a ticking heal over time that is quite frankly absolutely broken. This is what makes us an unkillable, radiant entity that you will rarely need to use your heal to keep up. Our fifth spell slot is Flexible. You can go for further offensive capabilities in the form of Lucent Beam, which is a little overkill in my opinion, but incredibly fun to use. You could also swap this for Aureus' Judgment, but I do feel like Aureus' Judgment is better due to its cast and forget nature. I feel a better choice here would be a defensive choice such as Sanctify, a holy sigil that is placed on the ground which heals us and the status effects placed upon us. When you drop this for a big fight, you can stand in this and charge up your attacks whilst freely getting whacked in the face with the confidence you'll likely emerge with full health. In combination with the Eye of Loash as a main socket in our lamp, this gives us further ability to face tank even the hardest hits without even having our poise broken. Another choice is the Aura of Tenacity. This means we take a flat damage reduction on all damage received and can use it in tandem with Invigorating Aura. That's if you're happy with the occasional consuming of mana stones to keep your mana topped off. In terms of how to play this build mechanically, it's very straightforward. Buff up with Radiant Weapon, Invigorating Aura, and/or Aura of Tenacity. Select your target, cast Aureus' Judgment, and perhaps cast a Piercing Light or two for good measure. This ensures the stagger bars have taken a bit of hit damage before you arrive in melee range, then administer a finishing blow to the stagger bar and decimate your foe with a Grievous Strike. Rinse and repeat this process. Grievous Strike does around 4k damage in total, so you can expect to see health bars absolutely melt away rapidly. You can perform this rotation knowing you're pretty much unkillable as well, just like a real Radiant Reaper. There we have it, folks. An unkillable Radiant Reaper of Holiness to rain down righteous fury on your enemies. The channel is growing steadily, and I'm absolutely loving making content for you. I hugely appreciate all the ongoing support and discussion that you've been providing. It really is so beneficial to the development of this interdimensional community. Thank you for all the likes, subscribes, and comments. They really do make all the difference. Now, with that in mind, if you'd like to see more content of this nature, please do smash that like button and subscribe to the channel to support. So, until next time, take care, enjoy the build, and I'll see you in the next one, guys.